This isn't about building walls, it's about protecting your peace. Step 1 was learning to say no, just like we talked about in the last series. But saying no is only the doorway, boundaries are what come after. It's not about pushing people away, it's about finally choosing yourself. This is step 2. Maybe building boundaries isn't easy, especially for those who never had it growing up and are building it now for the first time, like me. But trust me, the hard part is worth it because the peace that comes after is everything. I once heard something that stopped me. Boundary violation isn't something that only applies to countries. And then came the line that stayed with me. If you are not the guardian of your boundaries, being invaded is inevitable. I watched it twice, then a third time, because nobody had ever put it that way before. Your boundaries are a territory, and if you don't protect them, someone else will decide where they end. Someone else will decide how much of your time, energy, and peace belongs to them. And I wish someone had told me sooner. I used to think closeness meant having no boundaries, that love meant always being available, always open, always there for the people I cared about. But the more I read, the more I realized psychologists were saying something else entirely. Kindness without boundaries leads to resentment, burnout, and being used. Kind people need boundaries more than selfish people do, because selfish people already protect themselves. But kind people, if they don't protect their own limits, they slowly give away pieces of themselves. And for years, I was doing exactly that without even realizing it. I still remember what it looked like when I had no boundaries. I wanted everyone to think I was easygoing and cool, so I let people give me opinions I never asked for about my life, my work, my appearance, even who I was as a person. And whenever someone asked a question, no matter how personal or intrusive it was, I felt obligated to answer, even when I didn't want to, even when it made me uncomfortable. I'd answer with a smile, then go home feeling awful, replaying the conversation in my head, wishing I had said less. What I didn't realize back then was this: boundaries don't push people away, they teach people how to stay in your life without hurting your peace. Over time, I realized something. Not everyone who crosses your boundaries does it for the same reason. Some people do it on purpose. They criticize, they judge, they pry, because it gives them a sense of control. Others aren't trying to hurt you. They just never learned what boundaries look like. They ask too much. They overstep, not out of cruelty, out of habit. But here is what I finally understood. In both cases, my job is the same: to protect my own peace. One of the hardest lessons I ever learned was this: being close to someone doesn't give them the right to control you. Someone I loved once thought they could decide who belonged in my life, a family member. If they didn't like someone, they'd be cold, rude. Sometimes they'd even ask them to leave. My home, my guests, my life. They had an opinion on all of it, every choice I made, and no matter how many boundaries I set, they'd always find another angle to attack from. Then came the manipulation, twisting things to make themselves look right and me look wrong. That's not love, that's control wearing love's clothes. And here's the hardest part: I loved them. But with some people, love isn't enough, because no relationship survives without respect, and sometimes the only boundary left is to walk away. This is where boundaries got complicated, because someone else I loved crossed the line too. They used to ask deeply personal questions, sometimes about my husband, sometimes opinions I never asked for. At first, it made me uncomfortable, but I could tell It didn't come from control. It came from not knowing where the line was. Because when I finally set a boundary, when they saw I didn't want to answer, they respected it. They tried to learn my limits. And somehow we grew even closer. Same boundary, two completely different people. And that's how you learn who someone really is and how much distance you need to keep. Boundaries aren't the punishment, they're protection. They're not there to decide who's good and who's bad. They're there to decide what I let into my life. And here's the part that changed everything for me. Healthy people might not understand your boundaries right away, but they learn to respect them. The ones who fight them, who ignore them, who make you feel guilty for having them, are showing you exactly what you needed them. So if someone walks away because you finally started protecting your peace, maybe that's not a loss. Maybe that's the boundary doing its job. The hardest part about boundaries isn't setting them, it's surviving the guilt that comes after. When I first started, it felt awful. For me, it was simple things, not letting people comment on my appearance, my personality, my family, when I never asked for their opinion. And still, I felt guilty. What if I hurt their feelings? What if they don't like me anymore? But the more I practiced, the more confident I became. And something surprising happened. People started respecting me more. Here's something I had to learn. Boundaries and pushing people away can look very similar from the outside, but they're not the same. Especially when you're just starting to set boundaries, it's so natural to confuse the two. But the more you learn, the more self-respect you build, the clearer the difference becomes. When someone crosses a line, I don't attack, I don't shut them down. I just smile and say, I'm not comfortable talking about that. Let's talk about something else. Because healthy boundaries aren't built with anger. They're built with self-respect. The biggest mistake I made when I first tried to set boundaries, I thought they were about controlling other people. I thought a boundary sounded like, you can't do that, you can't talk to me like that. But that's not really a boundary. Because boundaries aren't about controlling someone else's behavior. They're about deciding what you'll do when it happens. For example, instead of, you can't criticize me, I can say, if you keep criticizing me, I'm ending this conversation. See the difference? One tries to control them, the other protects me. I don't have to answer every question. That was one of the hardest boundaries to learn. If a question makes me uncomfortable, if I don't want to answer it, if it just feels wrong, I don't owe anyone an explanation. It took a lot of practice. Now, when someone asks a question that feels disrespectful, I calmly say, what made you ask that? Or what did you mean by that? And if I simply don't want to answer, I say, I'm not comfortable talking about that. Please don't ask me about it. Then I change the subject. No tension, no hard feelings, just a quiet line that says, this far and no further. Here is what surprised me most. Now, I actually like people more. It sounds strange, right? But think about it. When you don't defend your boundaries, when you let everyone say and do whatever they want, you don't just get frustrated with yourself for staying quiet. You start resenting them too, little by little. You begin to dislike the people around you. But the moment I started speaking up for myself, that anger faded. Less resentment, more peace, and somehow more love for the people in my life. The strangest thing about boundaries, the disaster I was afraid of never came. When I first started setting boundaries, I thought people would get angry. I thought every no would turn into an argument. Every limit would disappoint someone, but most of the time, nothing happened. I said no. I changed the subject. I stopped explaining myself, and the world kept spinning. That's when I realized the biggest battle wasn't with other people. It was in my own head. Because for years, I had convinced myself that protecting my peace would create conflict. But most healthy boundaries aren't dramatic, they're quiet. A sentence, a decision, a limit, and then life goes on. The most important boundary I ever learned had nothing to do with other people. It was with myself, with my time, my energy, my attention. Because not every boundary sounds like saying no to someone else. Sometimes it sounds like saying no to yourself. I don't check my phone the moment I wake up. I don't stay up late scrolling when I know I need sleep. I don't say yes to plans when I need rest. I don't keep eating just because I'm stressed. The truth is, every time you protect your time, your energy, your health, you're setting a boundary. And maybe that's where every healthy boundary really begins. Not with them, but with you. One thing I didn't expect about boundaries, they don't just protect your peace. They make you a lot less interesting to the people who depend on you having none. Remember the leeches we talked about in the last series? The ones who feed on people with no limits? Healthy boundaries take you off their radar. And something surprising happens. When you learn to set healthy boundaries with other people and with yourself, you become more respected and often more liked too. Not by everyone, and definitely not by the leeches, but by the people worth keeping. It takes time. You might feel lonely for a while, but one day you will look around and realize you're surrounded by people who bring peace instead of taking it away. And maybe that's what boundaries were always for. Loud and tender.